So 1 minute. So you can start.
Okay, I'll start. Okay. So thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this opening session of the webinar series, Adopting Together: Climate Stories and Strategies from Asian Cities. As you know, this is 132nd event under the webinar series Rethinking City. INHAF has been presenting for the past few years. And this one is co-hosted by CityNet, CANSA, AIDMI, and INHAF. Over the next 5 weeks, we will hear voices from across Asian cities that are at the front line of the climate crisis. Today, in our first session, we place cities within the wider global climate framework. As we know, cities contribute over 70% of emissions, but they are also where the impact of climate change is most painfully felt, from heat and floods to rising seas and scarcity of water. Our discussion today will help us understand how do cities find their rightful place in the global climate process? How can they access the finance and support they need? And most importantly, what distinctive lessons can Asian cities bring to the world? With that sort of introduction, very brief, I know everyone is very busy. We are very fortunate to be joined by 5 eminent voices, each bringing years of contribution to this subject. And the first speaker today is Dr. Sunita Narain. I admire her work so much and respect her contribution so immensely that over the years I call her Sunita. Dr. Sunita Narain is the Director General of the Center for Science and Environment. She has been a tireless advocate for equity and justice in environmental policy for over 4 decades. She has consistently reminded us that climate change is not just about emissions, but it's about people's lives and livelihoods. My leading question to Sunita ji is, global talks are full of targets and numbers, but often the human dimension gets lost. Do you feel the global stocktake and recent COP declaration truly reflect the realities of vulnerable cities in the global south? And if not, what must cities demand differently to ensure that justice and equity are not just words on paper, but guiding principle for action? So this, Sunita ji, is your question, and you have about 10 minutes.
Thank you, Kirti. And again, thank you so much for asking me to be part of this series and for the launch of this webinar. It's such an important, critical issue. And I'm delighted to see Mihir here and Kansa, so that it is good that we are bringing all the institutions who can provide force to this, both at the national level and global level. And of course, Kirti, you and I go back a long, long, long way. So I'm delighted to be here with you. So let me try.
Thank you, Sunita. Thank you.
Let me put some sort of outline to the issues that you have raised. Now, I will talk about the global issues and also what is it that we need to do to be more effective in the global issues. The fact of the matter is that cities in the south today are literally going under because of climate change. I mean, yesterday we had a situation where Mumbai was underwater. Most cities of India are finding today, our neighbor Pakistan has had horrific floods. Most of the cities in our world, in Africa and Asia, are finding that when it rains, it brings misery to the cities because we have floods and we have huge devastation and loss of property because of it. We also find that the other huge impact of climate change today is heat. And we are finding heat levels are going up. And this is the best thing. I mean, I cannot say it's the best thing, but the one thing about climate change, which should give us some sense of comfort, is that climate change is a great equalizer. That and that it's not just the Asian cities that are now fighting heat, not Africa, but also European cities are fighting this extraordinary heat levels that we get and which has huge impacts on people. 2 years ago, when we had this very bad heat episode in Delhi, my colleagues in Down to Earth went out to interview a lot of people to put a human face to it, exactly what you've asked, Kirti. Put a face to what we talk about heat. You and I live in air-conditioned comfort. We don't suffer that heat. But what is it doing to the people who are faced with those heat levels, and how does it impact them? The one thing that stunned us is to find that we are now getting into two different phenomena which are going to make this even worse. One, we are getting a wet bulb phenomena, which means that heat is getting combined more and more with humidity. And this means that we are now even at relative heat levels which are not too high. There is huge discomfort. And the wet bulb phenomena is something which will take more impact of our lives than even even dry heat. And the other we found, which was even more worrying and has to do with the nature of urbanization that we have, is that the temperature difference between the hot and the cold, between the daytime and the evening time, is actually reducing. Now, earlier on in most of our cities, we used to have heat during the day, but during the evening, temperatures used to come down, which meant that, as medical scientists will tell you, the human body got a chance to calm down, to cool down, to cope. Today, with that not happening, people are finding that our stories were horrific, where we found that many deaths were happening at night, that laborers working in construction site would just go to sleep and never wake up. Now, none of these deaths are reported as heat stress. None of them are reported as deaths because of heat levels, but they are happening in our cities. So, and then, of course, there's a third impact of climate change, which is the increased health burden that we will have because of vector-borne diseases. So those are the three big ones which you can attribute to climate change and urbanization. Now, the issue as we move ahead, both nationally and globally, and this is important for us, and I think your webinars have been talking about these up till now, is that none of this is only climate change. This is because of the patterns of urbanization and the urban growth models that we have in our countries, which is adding to and exacerbating the impacts of climate change. So it's not easy for us to go globally and say, my city has gone under and I'm having flooding because of climate change, because it's climate and you are responsible for it. It's also because we have destroyed our drainage systems. Think about the city that you're sitting in, Kirti, this horrific, this map of Ahmedabad, which shows us the number of tanks and ponds that existed in Ahmedabad. And today, if at all, you have protected a few and beautified them as holes in the ground. They don't have their catchment. They don't have their ability to be, they don't have an economic reason for existing other than recreation. Most cities of India, including my own city of Delhi, has the same situation. Bangalore, Hyderabad. So the whole tradition of being able to hold the water where it falls to create drainage systems, we have lost. Today, Mumbai is going under. The Mithi River has been declared a nala officially. It's a freshwater river. I mean, the tragedy of our generation when we can declare a freshwater river into officially into a drain. So we have destroyed drainage in our cities. Then, of course, and I'm speaking to you and your community as architects, you have a vision of city architecture which comes out of the Western world. So we have glass buildings everywhere, which are heat traps instead of having buildings which would actually have ventilation. Low ceilings, we don't have fans. An air conditioner without fans is not effective. Today, the wet bulb phenomena requires ventilation more than it requires air cooling. So we need to understand the cycle that is happening today in our cities. And I'm saying this because if we want to have a credible voice globally, we have to come to the global stage with our own homework done. And our own homework done to say this is the crisis that we are in today. And it is a crisis that we are repairing because we need to fix our systems of urban growth to be able to cope and mitigate better. But that we understand that the worst impacts of climate change are happening because of the extreme weather events that are happening. And that has a direct correlation with the increasing temperatures in the atmosphere. I am sure most of your panelists would have seen it. Many of your participants, I hope, have also seen. My colleagues put out an annual report on the state of extreme weather events in India. That report tells us that in India, because we have data only for India, unfortunately not for other countries, that report tells us that in India, we have one extreme weather event a day almost. So more rain, more cold, more heat in one region or the other, one day in every day of the year almost. It's the same across Africa, same across our region. So the impacts of climate change are real. Climate change is happening, but it is exacerbating the mismanagement and the maldevelopment that we are doing in our own notion of what is a city. Now, this is really where the opportunity exists, Kirti, for us to be able to re-envision what do we mean by a city which can cope with climate change, with the extreme weathers. Now, clearly for us, there are huge opportunities as we move ahead. And I'm talking about particularly countries like India, where urbanization is a half completed exercise. We have still got huge growth areas that are going to happen. We can do things so differently. We can build our water and sanitation systems so that they are on-site sanitation, non-sewer sanitation. We can build our water system so that we stop transporting water long distances. We first depend on the groundwater and the local water harvesting systems, revive our ponds and tanks. All that becomes a way for climate adaptation, both for the mitigation of heat, because it cools our cities, and for the recharge of excess rainwater. Also for us to be able to live with drought, as we will have more rain and then fewer number of rainy days. We need to build our cities differently, our buildings differently, so that we plan on passive architecture, we planned on wind tunneling, we plan on shading for our buildings, we plan on reducing the air conditioner demand, because we know today, and Kirti, this is work that you and Mihir and others have been doing for years, you know that the urbanization and the heat that we have in our cities is much to do also with the microclimate. And today what we have is more concrete, more vehicles, more air conditioners. All of them are contributing to the heat in our cities. And that combined with heat waves is the deadly impact. Now, and I will close this by saying, we need to put this human face, these best practices on the global stage. We need to re-envision our own city planning, keeping in mind both the need for inclusion, and for me and all the work that CSE has done, we have shown again and again, whether it has been our work on air pollution, whether it's been our work on water, whether it's been our work on waste management, whether it has been our work on sewage management and river cleaning, that if you don't have inclusive growth in cities, you can never have sustainable growth. That's our vision. Our issue of development and equity come together. We don't add it on top. You can't clean your rivers if you don't intercept the sewage of everyone in your cities. And you cannot intercept the sewage in a capital-intensive, resource-intensive system. So for us, the paradigm of a new vision of cities is built into the need for inclusion, which then is sustainable and which will help us to adapt to climate change. That is the voice we need to take globally, and then we can talk about the money that is needed. Today, the Indian government and many of the colleagues across the world go to every negotiation saying, we need money. True, we need money. The agreement, the Rio agreement was that the West would reduce, we will increase our emissions, but we will increase them differently because we will be enabled by money and technology. But we cannot ask for money till we have a credible plan. And for the credible plan, we need it to be based on our reality, on our truth, build upwards, and take it to the global community to say, this is the human impact of it. This is what we need to do. This is what it will cost. That's what I think is missing today. I hope I've kept to my time. Thank you so much for asking me to start. Thank you, Kirti.
No, thank you, Sunita. Thank you for coming and sharing this. Let me tell you in a second that what you are saying is precisely what we are doing this webinar series
Yes.
for. It is called Rethinking City. We say, look, we have a major challenge in terms of climate change. Our urban challenge is not less formidable. We've got to understand it. We've got to deal with it. And we've got to deal with it in our own ways. And be that water, be that heat, be that inclusion, be that, I think planning, we've got to find our own ways. And I'm very glad you said that we require to do our homework a great deal more before we go across to the world and say, this is how we are dealing with climate change. So thank you very, very much, Sunita. I know you were very busy. You agreed after I wrote my second letter.
For you, only for you. I don't think any of the panelists understand when I'm giggling like this. Kirti and I go back to 1980.
Yes, right. Yes.
We are, you have to understand. And Mihir and I go back equally long. So I am an Ahmedabad girl to some extent. Not in today's India, but somewhat.
Thank you, Sunita. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know we probably have to go, but
I will listen to my co-panelists and then leave. I look forward to hearing
thank
them.
Thank you. Well, the second speaker today, thank you, Sunita, very much again. The second speaker today is Dr. Vijay Jagannathan. Decades that I have known him, he's always been Vijay Saab to me. I continue calling him Vijay Saab, and I've done this for about 40 years. Vijay Jagannath ji is Secretary General of CityNet. He has decades of experience bridging global finance and local governance. At the World Bank and now with CityNet, he has worked to connect infrastructure, climate finance, and city leadership across Asia. I'm working very closely with him on CityNet for last 12 years, and it's been a remarkably fruitful experience of working with him. Vijay Saab, the question for you is, you've seen firsthand how cities struggle to access resources. Many Asian cities are recognized in global forums but struggle to turn that recognition into real financial flows. What, in your view, is stopping cities from moving from promises to resources? Could you share one or two practical lessons, examples, mechanisms from your work that can help cities unlock climate finance, not just for the wealthier capital cities, but also for smaller, under resourced municipalities? So, this is the question. How do we do that? Thank you. Vijay sir.
Thank you, Kirti. Thank you very much. And I've learned a new phrase today about the wet bulb phenomenon, which I think is quite appropriate to the kinds of problems we are facing. I'd like to start by saying that CityNet is a network, for those of you who are not familiar with it, of local leaders, cities, and partner agencies. So it's one of the first organizations that includes both local leadership as well as think tanks, activist NGOs like Kirti. And so it's an interesting group with very different dynamics to normal regional or international organizations. So I'd like to make 2 points. One is, as we all know, all politics is local. But what is very often not equally appreciated is that geography is also local. So if we start with a city having large floodplains, it is almost inevitable that if there are issues like what Dr. Narain was describing, they become highly vulnerable places. And this is something which it's one of those amazing things where just from common sense you'd know that if people are living in the floodplains of a big city, they are going to be most vulnerable to the next big event, which unfortunately, as we all know, is happening everywhere at any time. We have no idea when the next crisis is going to hit a city. So within this kind of a situation we are in, I'd like to make 2 points, one on the climate adaptation side, but one on the climate mitigation side. On the climate adaptation side, what we have seen among our members in CityNet is a wide variety of practices led by local leaders. Essentially, when a mayor of a city realizes that the popularity or the legacy that he or she leaves behind is very much dependent on how they are able to take care of the various kinds of problems the city faces because of climate, it has tremendous benefits. And the benefits go beyond just the political popularity of the mayor to actually investments coming into the city. For example, the city of Iloilo in the Philippines, which is a mid-sized city in the Visayas, had a mayor who was quite far-sighted in his view. And what he did, because as you know, Iloilo, Philippines itself gets hit by typhoons every year, and they're just getting worse all the time. So what he did was to access the knowledge which is available in Japan to see how the city could be protected against the next big one, which would hit the area. And this happened about 10 years ago. There was a very mega typhoon called Haiyan, which completely devastated the entire Visayas belt of the Philippines. But Iloilo was spared the trauma of the typhoon because they did some very simple, what you call non-structural actions. And essentially, these are simple, common sense planning actions, and also made sure that the entire community was well prepared on and was drilled enough times to know how they would have to react when there is a warning of a typhoon. So this is an example where local leadership also taking advantage of the kind of knowledge available in the world, and most of all using common sense, is able to have tremendous benefits for the city. And if you are to visit it today, it's one of those, and this typically the kind of middle-sized city, Kirti, you're talking about. It's not one of the mega cities of the Philippines. Probably most of you haven't heard of it, but it is just incredibly impressive when you go there and see how the city has not only managed to handle this constant problem they face every year, but the kind of investments flowing in. Because now that the global economy has got so much integrated, a lot of the back office functions, in fact, many of the back office functions which were earlier in India have now moved to Iloilo City because investors find that it's a very convenient place for them to access cheap labor and also get into the back and middle office functions of companies. So that's one example. Another example which also comes to mind in a very different setting is Lalitpur in Nepal. Now, again, they're led by local leadership. They have been able to, and Lalitpur, as you know, is right next to Kathmandu. It's a part of the greater Kathmandu metropolitan area, and it's where you have the famous cultural heritage of Nepal. Again, there you see that the city leaders have been able to leverage basically non structural measures, simple planning measures to make things happen. And so this comes back to a fundamental point, which is that for those of you who are planners and architects, the most important task you have is to get the local leaders to begin appreciating the consequences of inaction. And here, what I would suggest is that one way to do it is also to leverage technology. Now that we have the benefits of fantastic technology, especially with digital twins and other opportunities coming in, I think there is a very big teaching moment for our political leaders at the local level. At the national level, there are too many issues. Even when you look at climate change, what is being discussed in the global forums have very little relevance as far as most local leaders are concerned who are dealing with day-to-day problem until they face the next big cyclone or the next big flood or the what we are now seeing this idea of the atmospheric rivers coming and pouring water down your city. It's only then that they wake up. So that's one. Now, what we did see an example of where the local leaders really took concrete action to take a very big and chronic problem was in Jakarta in Indonesia. Whereas those of you who know, Jakarta is also another mega city like Mumbai. And just like in Mumbai, you've got people living in all the wrong spots, in the low-lying areas, close to the sea. And every year there used to be this phenomenon of the city getting flooded and millions of the poorest people getting badly affected because they were living in these equivalents of our slums in India and couldn't face the flood of onslaught of water which came in. It took many years of convincing, but really the convincing had to happen both at the local leadership level and at the national level to set up a completely integrated, modern, technology-driven system which is able to now warn. The early warning system has been put in place using satellite technology also, so that people are given enough notice to take remedial action or move to higher ground when the inevitable flood comes in. So these are just three examples I'm giving you. Iloilo and Lalitpur examples where the local leaders made all the difference and is for anyone to go and see. You can also see on the website of how Iloilo city has prospered since then. And then you've got the mega city example of Jakarta, which obviously was of huge importance to the government of Indonesia. But it took a lot of years of persuasion and support to begin to appreciate that with the kind of data we have today, by integrating the data from the satellite to the ground and by involving the people in the decision making, there could be a way to tackle this phenomenon which happens every year but is getting worse year by year caused by climate. So this is on the climate adaptation side. But I'd like to turn to the second on the climate mitigation side, because here we know that there is usually in the media and also what Dr. Narain was referring to in the politics of climate, there is a lot of talk about the cities of the global south emitting all this GHGs and so on. Now, what people have not fully appreciated is that along with the emissions which the cities are facing, there are also huge opportunities. One of the big opportunities, which I think any local leader would agree with us that it's a big problem, is of waste. That the amount of solid waste generated in a city And the proportion of it, which is organic waste, is huge, running into thousands of tons per day. Add to this also the fact that there is a huge amount of human waste which is also being generated in the city. In some cases, there are even animal waste which are coming in. And what all these have in common on the organic side is that they are the source of methane, which is a deadly greenhouse gas. Now, why is this interesting for a city leader? Because methane has 26 times the potency of carbon dioxide. So if you have the price of carbon at, say, 50 euros a ton today, you can imagine how much the value of the methane if it is captured properly. So the point here is that capturing methane achieves two things at one time. If there is a systematic planning system by which we are able to capture the methane from a city, I'm not saying a Mumbai size, but even of a mid-sized city, there could be possibilities of a very substantial inflow of resources coming directly from the global carbon markets to the city. You might say this is like a pipe dream. No, but it's not really so, because I think increasingly we are seeing year by year that carbon pricing is becoming important. It's only a matter of time. But if you want to be the first city to access carbon financing, the place to look for is where you have the biggest challenge at the local level. How do you manage your entire waste cycle in such a way that you promote not only circularity in resource usage by the inorganic parts, whether it's plastics or paper or whatever, but also the organic part, where what is making things much worse in most of our cities is because they don't have a sewerage system, on-site sanitation, or the septic tanks, which many cities have, are functioning, at least conceptually function the same way as solid waste. It should be managed the same way as in the case of solid waste. So combining the solid waste as well as human waste into a program of methane capture results in tremendous benefits for the city. Now, it's interesting because some of the most interesting work in this area is happening in China. About 5 years ago, I was invited by a mid-sized Chinese city called Zhangyang in Hubei province, who had started this idea of basically collecting the waste from kitchens of the 10 largest restaurants and combining it with the sludge coming in from their wastewater treatment plant to capture the methane. And they were using it to power the entire taxi fleet. They changed the taxi fleet from petrol to CNG. And so this was being reused, and they also used a process called they used the biochar coming out of the heat from the treatment of the methane for urban forestry. So we did the economics of it at that time. We tried to find out, does this make any economic sense? And what we found, and this is dated information, but it is available on the web if any of you are interested. What we found there was that if you do get financed at a concession, it makes sense. But it has to be a public private partnership. It has to be with the city government taking the responsibility to make sure that the waste gets captured. But the plant has to be run by the private sector because it does require a different set of incentives to make sure that it's run without any problems of operations and maintenance. So the city had worked out a system in which the contractor was leased out the land in their wastewater treatment plant, but the city took the responsibility to make sure that the waste would be available, and the contractor would pay each restaurant for the waste generated and then treat it. Now, this kind of phenomenon is something which is now, just a few months ago, I was at an international seminar in Samarkand in Uzbekistan, and I was fascinated to find that there were three large Chinese companies which have been specializing in this, and they had basically undertaken this kind of waste capture in at least about 7 or 8 large cities of China. Now, this is the kind of information we don't hear much because they were speaking in Chinese. I don't think anyone had publicized what they're doing, but there's no reason why this kind of an opportunity cannot be accessed by companies in India, Indonesia, and other cities, countries of Asia, where you've got the technology, the knowledge and the technology available. You've got also the kind of expertise, and you've got a lot of very poor people dealing with the low end of the waste collection process. So what I'm saying is that waste is another huge opportunity where it's a win-win, because the cities of the global south can actually tell the global north that you give us the financing or get us access to the carbon, the climate funds, we can collect for you 10,000, 15,000 tons of waste a day, which is going to have a positive impact on the global climate. So you can imagine there are huge opportunities. There isn't much interest on the part of the Western waste companies for obvious reasons, because their concern, usually the feedback we get is it's too complicated. You've got a waste picker who's at one end, they're also highly politicized, they're unionized. We don't know how to collect the waste. But the reality today is that with every waste picker also having a mobile phone, there are ways in which you can make this completely taking advantage of modern technology, taking advantage of AI and so on. You could make it in such a way that the waste picker gets paid automatically into his bank account every time he brings all the organic waste to the collection point. And then, as the Chinese had done, they basically use basically a transportation model to make sure that the amount of waste they needed for the methane capture plant came in effectively. But this has been scaled up. It has not been adequately exposed to the countries of the West. And here's an opportunity to learn. And I think there are many in India and Indonesia where NGOs are working in this field, where it is possible to just leverage the technology which is coming in. Perhaps that's again where the digital twin concept may be helpful in persuading politicians and local leaders that let's move in this area quickly. So those are two examples I gave you, Kirti. I think I have exceeded my time. Thank you very
No.
much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Uh, Very good, Vijay Saab, that you covered both the adaptation side and the mitigation side. And as a matter of fact, I was trying to talk to Pauli that we should try and get someone from Iloilo. Someone from Iloilo would have been very good because it's a terrific example of leadership and in terms of what could have been done. And every advantage is here that we have someone from Jakarta. And I think we'll get a story from the horse's mouth in a manner of speaking. So that's an advantage. And Lalitpur, I think I'm glad you pointed out because I was with them, not Lalitpur people, from Nepal people in the meeting day before, I think in Kuala Lumpur, and they continue telling stories in terms of how this is working and what kind of leadership is really playing a role. So wonderful that you pointed out the role of the local leadership. You give an example of what a small city can do through innovations and learning. Hello, hello. And of course, the entire story about waste treatment and its economy, and in terms of how could you deal with the whole thing. So thank you very, very much. And sorry, I know it's very early for you, 5:30 in the morning in Washington, but very glad that you made it. And I still see, I think, you feel sleepy, it looks sleepy, but very glad that very glad that you made made this presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
The third speaker that we have today is Dr. Oswar Mungkasa. Dr. Mungkasa is a former Deputy Governor of Jakarta, has overseen one of Asia's most ambitious resilience strategies, addressing land subsidence, floods, and waste management through innovative data-driven planning. I'm very glad, Dr. Oswar, you're here. And my question to you is this. Jakarta is often described as a city under pressure, yet also a city of innovation. How did you work to align Jakarta's urgent local priorities with broader global frameworks like the Paris Agreement? What do you see as the biggest leadership challenge in turning resilience strategies into reality in a megacity like Jakarta? And how did you balance urgent short term needs with long term resilience goals? So these are big and long questions. And you have what, 10 minutes? I also know you have 25 slides. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Allow me to share my presentation first.
You have your slides or you have sent it to our office? Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. You can see the presentation? Excuse me. Have you seen
Sir, we
the
can see.
presentation?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to come to this meeting. I think this is a very important meeting. And then I will talk about the collaborating to address climate change and then share learnings from Jakarta. It is quite a little bit different. I mean, why collaborating? I'll explain later. So let me start with the talking about Jakarta. Jakarta, we city with 10 million, 10 million, 10 million people, and then of course this is at night. In the daytime, we have 13 million people, and why? Because we have 1.7 million daily commuters. It is like the whole city from outside Jakarta come to Jakarta and then stay for the whole day and then go back to their city. And this is really a big pressure for Jakarta. And Greater Jakarta, as a metropolitan Jakarta, has more than 35 million inhabitants, making it the second largest metropolitan area in the world after Tokyo was. And as a Delta city, traversed by 13 rivers, Jakarta faced both rapid population growth and complex governance arrangement. We had three governors in one metropolitan, and then 8 major. So talking about Jakarta, Jakarta is the most vulnerable delta cities in the world. Some parts of Jakarta are sinking up to 20 centimeters in maximum every year, but on average it's like 7 centimeters every year. This combined with the risk of sea level rise puts Jakarta at the great risk of flooding and long-term displacement. The Jakarta is consistently ranked among the top 10 cities. This is not good for us, but this is the reality. With the worst air quality in the world, alongside cities like Beijing, Lahore, and Delhi. This challenge affects public health, productivity, and overall quality of life. So, and then another thing is that when we're talking about the clean water and sanitation on waste, we still have problem with that. I mean, like waste, solid waste, we have like 8,000 tons of waste per day. This is like 8,000 elephant every day go to the dump site, and then this is also a pressing issue with large volume generated daily and limited capacity for sustainable handling. And every day, around 1 million commuters travel to Jakarta, as I mentioned before, contributing to more than 47 million trips across the metropolitan area of Jakarta. Only 30% rely on public transport. That's why we have problem with traffic jam. We have problem with the air pollution because you can see there are 2 million cars in Jakarta every day go around the city. And then when we talk about the stresses and shock, we also talking about the congestion, pollution, and land subsidence, but also acute shocks like floods, fire. I mentioned about fire. Why? Because in Jakarta, every day we have like 3 to 4 what do you call it, fires every day. So this is really one of our sources of pollution, air pollution in Jakarta. And then addressing these challenges requires systemic solution, not isolated intervention, of course. And then this is the our main issue actually. We are not what do you call it? Even though we have many problems with pollution, solid waste, water, and etc. etc. But we are really worried about working in silos. Why? Because in our government structures, sometimes it seems like every single institution in Jakarta, they have their own boat. They go to the different direction. We don't talk each other, and then etc. etc. So we have many what would you call it? We translated the global agenda into the local agenda in our medium term planning every year, every 5 years. But it seems like when we put all the agenda in our medium term planning, it seems like we don't talk each other. So you can see there's many funny thing in Jakarta sometimes. I mean, you have the road, you don't have a lamp, something like that. So that's why I when we're talking about to translate the global agenda into the local agenda, walking in silo is one of our big problem. So that's why for me and for many others in Jakarta, the governance issue, the walking in silo is really a big issue. That's why we talk about a collaboration. Collaboration is very important in Jakarta. So this is like this is like walking in silos. Like we walk, but we don't talk each other. We don't know what happens outside, etc. etc. So so when we talk about this result of the walking in silo is like a fragmented and incomplete solution to urban problems. What is truly needed are integrated solutions supported by collaborative governance. That's why today I'm going to talk about collaborative governance, because this is very important in Jakarta to make everything we done for the climate change is efficient, would be efficient and effective. So how to implementing collaborative approach or a resilient city strategy as the output of the collaborative approach in Jakarta? Let me talk about the what happened before. Before we have like a revised spatial plan, we have a local action plan for climate change, we have a medium-term development plan, we have a coordination body of Metropolitan Jakarta, but it seems like it is ineffective because we don't talk each other, we don't collaborate each other. So we tried through collaborative governance with an effort of other stakeholders to talk about our what do you call it, our output, our plan, and then hopefully we can have like integrated and more comprehensive solution, better buy-in from broad range of stakeholders, more effective plan. So this is the idea why the collaborative approach is important for Jakarta. And then the step 1 of 4, we mapping the stakeholders. This is important. We don't want to leave someone behind. The second, of course, the determining the main issue. We have many issues, but we need to prioritize which one is much more important than others. So this is determined by the stakeholders, of course, not only by the government. And then to have a discussion among the stakeholders, we need to have like a forum of stakeholders. And then we have in Jakarta, we have many forum of stakeholders, Jakarta, forum of waste, forum of water, forum for air pollution, etc., etc. And then the step of 4 is agreeing on the outputs. So we agree on the outputs. What kind of outputs do we need to deal with? And then we have two kind of output in Jakarta. We have a grand design for important issue of Jakarta. Now we have 5 grand design: green building, and urban farming, waste management, water and domestic wastewater, child-friendly city. And then we have another output. We call it a resilient city strategy of Jakarta. But actually, the content is very much the same with the grand design, which is vision, mission, target, policies, strategies, roadmap, and action plan. And this is all the main outputs of actually is the translation of the global agenda in Jakarta with the context of local Jakarta. And then this is like the example of the result of our resilient Jakarta strategy. We have the vision, we have the pillars, we have 5 pillars, and of course we have also strategy and activities. And then this is all done by consensus and commitment of all stakeholders. It seems like we had like 1,000 stakeholders join our effort to develop this resilience city strategy of Jakarta. And then what we have so far, as I mentioned before, we have a grand design, we have a city resilient strategy. All this we already internalized in our medium-term planning of Jakarta. So hopefully, the global agenda already internalized in our local context through this grand design and city resilient strategy. And we also have a JAKI. JAKI is a digital, what we call digital collaboration, and then let me see, citizen by what do you call it, through JAKI, the citizen can report issues. The government respond in real time, and everyone can track the follow-up. It also facilitates data-driven solution for climate adaptation and mitigation. So this is two-way communication, transparency, and accountability, and multi-actor collaboration. Of course, the data-driven solution. So by having JAKI, we believe that the citizen engagement would be very much higher than before. So the lessons learned is that collaboration is a must, as it generates commitment, consensus, the ownership, and of course continuity and sustainability. This is from our experiences in Jakarta. And then the challenge, we have at least 3 challenges. When we try to collaborate, we find out that cross-sector and cross-jurisdiction coordination is very, very, what do you call it, overlapping mandates between national, provincial, and surrounding local governments. It's really what we call it. We don't have, what do you call it? We are not in the same boat sometimes. So collaborative platform is I think it's a must to align agendas. And then uneven technical capacity. The capacity of the central government, the capacity of a local government, the capacity of communities is very much different, and you have big gaps, disparities across agency and communities. And then, of course, knowledge sharing and digital platforms through JAKI is very much helping us to make it the technical capacity is more even. And public participation is still limited, often only at the consultation level. As Arnstein, what do you call it, leader, we call it tokenism. When we ask the people, what do you want? And then we just ask. We don't really care about the solution and or whatever. So this is their three challenges, and then okay, and then what is the way? The collaboration is essential. I mean, uh, the collaboration is essential. Collaboration is not optional. It is a must. Technology helps us accelerate it and scale up collaboration. So collaboration and the technology is kind of like one package for us in Jakarta to tackle the climate change in the future. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mr. Shah.
Thank you, Dr. Oswar. Many thanks, and I think you've done very well. I think for a large number of slides that you had, and it was very impressive in the sense that I think kind of things you described. I think we look very familiar with here in Indian situation as well. You talked about silos mentality and ways of working, and from there to kind of forum of stakeholders that you're really getting into. You're now talking about resilient Jakarta, talking about data-driven solutions, and of course talking about collaboration. As a matter of fact, I don't know how others felt, but I really had a large number of questions in terms of how did this happen and how is it working. We will try and see if we could get some answers from you in terms of how it is happening, how is it working, what kind of mechanisms are taking place, what kind of institutional innovations have happened when we come back, probably in question answers. But thank you very much for telling a very interesting and inspiring story of Jakarta. Our fourth speaker today is Sri Amitabh Sinha ji. Now, he refuses to call himself an expert on the subject, though he has been at this work for close to 15 years and writing for prestigious newspapers and journals. Amitabh ji is a deputy editor at the Indian Express. He has been one of India's most consistent voices explaining climate science and policy to the public, and his work helps bridge the gap between scientific complexity and public understanding. It's a terrific amount of interesting work that is happening through what you're doing. And my question, Amitabh ji, is this, that you have tracked climate science and policy negotiation for many, many years. From your vantage point as a journalist, do you think urban climate challenges are visible enough in public and policy conversations in India and Asia? Are they visible? And looking ahead, what role can sharper communication and storytelling play in ensuring that the cities are not seen as footnotes, but as frontline actors in the global climate narrative? These are the kind of slightly loaded questions, and I'm sure you have answers to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirtiji. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I do maintain that I'm not an expert on any one of these issues, but yes, I have been following some of these issues and have developed sort of familiarity with some of the conversations around these issues. So yes, as regard to your very specific questions about whether urban issues do find resonance in the policy discussions. I would say, I mean, depending on how you're looking at it, it's a yes and a no. And if you mean, whether they dominate the political discourse, because that's where the ultimate decision making is, then obviously you do not see much of uh, you know uh, discussion on urban issues. Even at the state elections, you see a lot of uh, so-called national issues dominate the political discussions. Uh, but there is a growing sector and a growing section uh, wherein urban issues are becoming very important, and where it's getting a lot of traction. One of them, of course, is social media. The other one is uh, you know people's own closed networks, whether it be WhatsApp groups or social networks that they belong to, which is not open as social media. Increasing I'm sorry, increasingly, as people travel more and are getting exposed to other cities, other countries, there is this increasing desire within this community of people to see some of those changes happening within the country as well. And we have seen some of this getting played out on open social media, which is even forcing sometimes the local administration uh, to change course or to make amends. And we have seen, uh, some uh, issues being raised about the road quality or the bridges or some other infrastructure that is being built, and a lot of outcry happens because they are not done in a proper way. And uh, you see there is some amount of public pressure that gets created, and which is forcing the local administrations to make those changes. So I think those are welcome developments, but they are far away from becoming a sort of a critical mass in forcing the both the local administration as well as the upper layers of administration uh, to make urban or city governance one of their key highlights of policy discussions. Now, the the thing about city governance, as far as climate change is concerned, is that uh, cities don't have to do anything completely or drastically different from what common sense notion of development is. Uh, I mean, you don't have to do something out of the way to achieve your climate objectives. You just have to do the basic things that are required in a city. Uh, if you clean up the city, Swachhata Abhiyan was a great sort of a campaign. Unfortunately, it has fizzled completely and is a major failure. But if you clean up this city, that's going to help in achieving your climate objectives. If you do your waste management properly, again, it's going to help your climate objectives. If you uh, build your roads in just basic proper manner, it helps reducing your vehicular emissions. It also reduces your air pollution, particulate matter. If you do your green spaces and public parks well, it has a host of co-benefits. If you do your public health and public transport in a city well, again, there are hosts of climate co-benefits. So it's not something that you have to do. Anything has to be done out of the ordinary. Most of the things are just about getting your basics right. Uh, and unfortunately, in so far, none of our cities actually, uh, and I would say a lot has to do with the lack of imagination, not just within the local administration, but also amongst the public, wherein the demand for these things, I think we just become too used to living in the kind of spaces that we live in and be content with it. For those of us who can afford to, we have moved into gated societies, which are qualitatively much better than outside spaces, and we are happy to come back to those gated societies and be confined to those gated societies for most of our times. When we go out, then it becomes a problem. But again, because we are in vehicles, personal cars, again, closed spaces, we are sort of okay with it. We don't outrage the way we needed to with the kind of spaces that we uh, reside in. So a lot of times, in fact, so some amount of, again, I would say there would be some amount of changes that we see in terms of some cities at least beginning to uh, reimagine how cities have to be done. Uh, uh, I probably, Indore is something that often comes up. Indore is only slightly better. It's better than most of our other cities, but again, it's not something which can be an example of a very, very good city. Bhubaneswar is another example, which is slightly better than most of other cities. And some of our cities in the south, Vishakhapatnam, for example. But we haven't actually imagined our city spaces in just the basic way. There are lots of things that we were planning to do. In fact, along with Swachhata, if you remember 10 years ago, they started this thing about 100 smart cities. Uh, Again, an utter failure. If you just look at the list of smart cities, instead of doing it smart, I think if we had just built, uh, you know, some basic structure into our cities, things probably would have been a lot better. Also, we haven't been giving. So two things I think, which I've always thought of. One is, we why have we not even been thinking about uh, building greenfield cities? Uh, let's say 1.5 million a city in every state. That would mean about 25, 30 cities, which can house about 5 to 6 million people each. And there is plenty of, one would imagine there is probably, a scope for having one new greenfield city in every state. The last successful city that we built was Chandigarh. We haven't done after that. I mean, examples of Gandhinagar or Naya Raipur haven't exactly taken off the way they were meant to. What we are still to see how Amravati turns up. But the only other examples of bustling cities uh, were not exactly planned that way. Cities like Gurgaon, for example, or Noida, which is a slightly better, but again, not exactly built as a greenfield city. So that is one. Probably, I'm not sure the whether it works out, because I'm sure somebody would have given a thought to it, and I don't know why it has not been taken up about building greenfield cities. The other thing which I thought was, uh, trying to fix the trying to start from a tier 3 cities, actually, not tier 2, and the metropolitan cities are very difficult to you know uh, fix in any case. But the smart cities, what they did, I mean, some of the city, I've always thought this, cities like Kanpur or Prayagraj, for example, I mean, they are very, very difficult to fix. Varanasi would be extremely difficult to fix. Half the city or even more is not connected to a drainage or a sewage network. Uh, there is no way to fix it until unless you demolish half the city and try to rebuild it. It's very difficult. On the other hand, uh, tier 3 cities, the smaller cities, uh, the or even Mufassil towns are much easier to manage, and probably would require lesser amount of uh, resources to be able to do it and develop and then let them grow, because a lot of them are actually growing haphazardly. So instead of fixing the larger metropolitan cities, or maybe no, you have to probably do both, because the stress on large cities is very high. Uh, but but I think if uh, if there was a little bit of imagination with lesser amount of resources, we could focus on the tier 3 cities and the lower end. I'm not sure why uh, that doesn't catch the imagination. One, of course, is the lack of public pressure. We have not been demanding it so much, uh, and the other is apathy. Probably there is no incentive to build cities, the smaller cities, because it doesn't come with any political dividends. I haven't in the Indian political system, I've not seen say a mayor which has been successful growing up the ranks and becoming a big man in politics. uh, Maybe there is an example, but not that I can recall. uh, so cities have not been the priority, unfortunately. Uh, some of it, as I said when I started out, some of it is changing, but I think we are still a far distance away from that becoming a critical mass, strong enough to force changes in the political decision making. Thank you. I'll end here.
Thank you, Amitabh. I think I'm really glad that you pointed out that you don't have to be doing extraordinary thing in order to kind of deal with climate change. If you do your normal things well enough, I think you keep your Swachhata Abhiyan going.
Yeah.
If you keep your waste management well, you keep your roads in a good condition, you manage your air pollution, you take green places well, I think you would more or less, not necessarily fully, but I think
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I think that's a very important point, because you don't have to kind of make it esoteric, something which is completely out of place. That is doable. That is something that is happening, in a manner of speaking. And that's a very good point that you made. I also wanted to kind of I'm glad you touched upon this 100 smart city experiment. I personally, we did a interesting study of 8 cities of Maharashtra as a part of the studying, what's happening to the smart city. And I personally feel, both in the context of city development and also in context of developing strategies for climate change, we lost a good opportunity. We have written it off, and I think it's been a very bad thing. And the other point that you made, I think touched me also, that we have not really built greenfield cities, in the last 60 or 70 years, except for for Chandigarh. In the sense that, of course, there have been things here and there, but not really built the whole city. And that itself it could provide a very important opportunity to deal with even the larger issues of climate change, if you were to kind of do that. So thank you very much. I'm glad that you yourself will start believing that you're not less of an expert on the subject. And the last speaker that we have today, I think we're doing fairly well in terms of time, probably 5-10 minutes here and there. The last speaker is a very young and articulate Nakul Sharma. Nakul bhai, thank you. Nakul is a program coordinator at Kansa, and Kansa is a Climate Action Network, South Asia. He represents a new generation of climate professionals, and you could see it on his face. His work focuses on renewable energy, clean energy transition, and ensuring energy justice in South Asia. Whenever I hear him, I think he impresses me immensely. Nakul bhai, question for you is: cities across Asia are under pressure to move to clean energy quickly. But transition can be unfair. Transition could leave behind workers, the poor, or informal settlements. As someone working on renewable energy and just transition, what would a truly just energy transition for cities in South Asia look like for you? What would be a just transition? And how do you think young professionals like yourself can push cities to go beyond declarations towards real transformation?
Thank you so much, Kirti Bhai, all the panelists and all the participants, those who are present here and listening to this conversation. Elated and honored to be part of this, high value and stalwart sort of panel and dais with Sunita ma'am. I think she's left for now. Vijay sir, yourself sir, Mihir Bhai, Amitabh Bhai, and Dr. Oswar. I think a very pertinent question, Kirti Bhai, and I think there are many components to it, and let me try and break down that for you. When we say just transition and just energy transition and the expectation from just energy transition, I think it's necessary for us to understand what we means by the overall aspects of the just aspect of just energy transition. I think from being a renewable energy and a climate and a clean energy practitioner, it's not an exertion for me to say that just energy transition for cities, especially in South Asia and largely for global South, goes much beyond than shifting the fossil fuel infrastructure to renewables. It's not only replacing the gray infrastructure with green infrastructure. It is way beyond than that. And when we talk about what exactly it is, I think it's not only about energy transition. It is a whole of a society transition. It's a social transition. It's an economic transition when we speak about the justice aspects of energy transition and ensuring how justice is done. Let me also try and slightly unpack it for you and for the audience. I think and this is especially important when we try to unpack it in perspective of how this happens in line with the urbanized or sort of city centered lifestyle that most of us are having in this era. I think a couple of points. First and foremost, I think when we say just energy transition, especially in relation, as you mentioned, in relation to cities, I think it has to be, as I said, also it has to be people centric. It need not be technology centric. In fact, it must not be technology centric. And but I mean, the larger question is, it's easier said than done. How could we make sure that it is people centric? I think the context of people-centric transition lies in the fact that we know, I mean, especially in India's and largely for all global southern cities, this is true that we are witnessing. We are a society and communities where we are witnessing deep inequalities. We have seen gated communities, and its comparison to informal settlements. We have seen high rise, we have seen high income communities, and along with those communities, we have seen street vendors. So how can we make sure that the just transition could bring equity between all of these communities, high income versus street vendors, are put on same pedestal when we are talking about clean energy transition or renewable energy transition in a city aspect. How can we make sure that the energy needs of a informal settler or poorest of the poorest is met in a assured way, in a affordable way, and in an equal manner? I mean, there's no discrimination that the high income group should get preferential treatment. So that's the basic principle, that just energy transition, upholding the justice aspect, means that we have to make sure that it is people centered and not technology centered. The second aspect, which I think is also very important apart from being people centered, is how can we make sure that the just energy transition is also adding its sort of fair share into the new economy which is coming up. And this is again very important because it has a context, because as we shift from fossil fuel infrastructure, which is gray infrastructure, some of the job or a major portion of the fossil fuel supply chain jobs are going to be impacted. So how can we make sure within the cities aspect that the new economy transition or new clean energy transition can ensure that new and additional jobs are added? And while these jobs are added in various sectors related to solar rooftop, urban cooling, or any other, decentralized or sort of, clean energy transport sector, in any of these sector, how could we make sure that these jobs are not only added, but we have enough and skilled manpower from all the informal and poorest of the poorest community, well representative, skilled manpower, and human resource available to match this demand and supply gap. So these are two important aspects. Beside, I think it's also important that we ensure that while walking the talk on just energy transition and upholding the justice aspects, we ensure that the just energy transition conversation brings inclusivity in the planning aspects of, what we've seen is that it's almost in all of the global southern cities, especially in India, that we've mostly been fed by grid energy supply systems. Most of the metro cities, we have a thermal power plant, somewhere out of the vicinity of the city or within the city, and we have been fed through that grid power system. So how can we make sure through just transition approach that we invest as communities into technology which is community driven, which is community owned? How can we make sure that the bottom of the pyramid decision making can be empowered to ensure that the technology decisions are also people decision? It could be solar, it could be wind, it could be hybrid, and it could be any other technology, but certainly it is people owned. Finally, and most importantly, I think as most of the panelists before me has already said, that climate change is one thing, but I think there's larger case of development gone wrong. And if we try and correct the things that we anyway should have done correctly, a large part of the problem which has been exaggerated or sort of enhanced by climate change risk would be solved anyway. So how can we make sure that keeping the just transition approach intact, our cities could be made more climate resilient? More climate resilient means, I mean, they're more resilient to heat, floods, thermal shocks, all of these things. Because I think without, renewable energy options which are not, backed up by resilient infrastructure, I don't think so. We should ensure that this to, make sure that we are not following a siloed approach, as which was very evident and spoken very well from the Jakarta case study. I think in summary and in collective thoughts, I think for South Asia and for Global South, we think that the just transition approach for energy transition for cities does not speak and does not mandate us to only meet and only keep our primary target as meeting the net zero targets. It's much more beyond that. It is something which can make sure that how our cities can collectively reduce inequality and create opportunity and protect the most vulnerable and poorest of the poor. So that's I think where we see it coming from. Last but not the least, coming on to the second half of your query, Kirti Bhai, is how we can see that the youth of the country can play a more proactive role in making sure that these are not, symbolic declarations, the city level declarations on climate action, and we can move from announcement to implementation. I think three things which come to my mind is one, in fact, is that whenever there is youth power, there is a clear example of how youth and citizen power can bring the change in bridging the gap in policy and people. This simply means that translating the, I mean, it could be, I mean, we have seen the Mumbai City Climate Action Plan. Climate Action Network South Asia is also working on Kolkata Climate Action Plan, and there are various activities and options in these city level climate action plan which are rather difficult to implement. So I see a clear role from policy to action for youth to unpack and simplify these plans and activities and make it into more actionable and community driven projects. The second thing is certainly when youth comes and when their focus is there. I think it's more to do with when they have invested their time and energy into unpacking the action policy from action implementation. They also come with a responsibility of follow up, and this follow up responsibility largely means ensuring accountability on various local municipal authorities or city level governance systems, which is very important because city level works and even any government work in all parts of the world and India especially is rather slow. And usually what happens is that the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing. So ensuring who's doing what in a timely manner ensures accountability, and that's where I see the youth role. Last but not the least, I think we can be dead sure that when the youth is there, youth power is there, inclusive decision making is something where the youth would definitely be able to help. And this becomes especially true when you said that, when transition is happening, it often comes with own challenges and it promotes inequality. That's very true. So we must use the youth power in ensuring that the voice of the marginalized, the poor community, street vendors, gender, all of these communities are listed and their priorities are sort of listened. And this bottom-up approach of feeding into local climate action plan and city level action plan could be ensured by youth participation. So I think these are a couple of initial suggestions from my end. I'll be happy to take follow-up questions, Kirti. Over to you.
Oh, thank you, Bhai Sab. Nakul Bhai made some very interesting points, and I think this is talking about people-centric, not technology-centric, energy transition. It's a very important point, and I think the point that I know the civil society has been making for a very, very long time, and it's also and I think the whole emphasis that you're putting on engagement of youth, putting them in the center of the process, giving them opportunities, allow them to kind of make it more inclusive and just and equitous. As a tremendous idea. And as a matter of fact, I'm personally going to look forward to your work on Calcutta's climate plan, because how are you including this in Calcutta plan is something that we would be watching very carefully, especially because we are trying to do something in Chennai, and we'll learn a great deal from you. So thank you very much. It's 4:30 exactly. That means we are behind by about 10 to 12 minutes. And I think there are a number of questions, Chitrakshi, can you pick up some of the key ones, and then we could request one or two of the panel members to answer, depending on what the question is. Are there many questions, Chitrakshi?
Yes, sir. There are 4 questions.
Yeah, can you pick up some of the most important ones?
Yes, sir. Is government considering climate change as is discussed to influence policy on construction of buildings or town planning by government or private companies?
Okay, who would want to take this up? Can you combine this with one more question so that which is uh, which is the same kind of grade?
A government response to people's feedback is extremely crucial for the success of technology-based solutions. What we have seen in Delhi that the government officials hardly respond truthfully to the issues raised on MCD app. How then it can be addressed if this can happen in Jakarta, then why not in Delhi?
Very good question. Who wants to take this up? Vijay Saab, is it still there?
Yes, I'm here.
What do you want?
So
Yeah.
let me take this up because I think this is a very important question raised. And what I find fascinating is when you look across Asia Pacific, India and Pakistan are standouts because India and Pakistan are the two countries where mayors have very little power. Mayors are a figurehead from the British days itself. In the other countries of Asia Pacific, the more democratic ones, you have had local leaders being elected. And to answer the question about government response to feedback, you must have a local leader. You cannot have a chief minister acting as a mayor of a big city. The reality in India is that any state government, if it is involving Mumbai or Chennai or Kolkata, the chief minister is directly engaged, even in allotting plots and so on. That doesn't work because issues are local, and there has to be the responsibility so that the person is held accountable and then either acquires prominence because of the work he or she has done in the city or is basically fades out of the picture. This, I think, is the most important thing. And it is fascinating that when you see India and Pakistan in all these forums where you have a municipal commissioner coming in, masquerading as a mayor, it doesn't work. And so that's, I think, the basic point. Silos come when you have a bureaucrat heading the whole system because the incentive is to favor one part of the bureaucracy against the other. So I think your point about feedback is really critical. One is you must have local leadership. You cannot have national. The question which when I was hearing Amitabh speaking, I was thinking was, is there some way in which MLAs and MPs from a city also could be brought in a more, to be more directly engaged? Because I know it could create tremendous complications, but at the same time, they are probably the closest you have to having a local leader like you're having in Philippines and Indonesia and Nepal and so on. That's one. Second thing is response to feedback. I think the power of the social media is so great. And the point made by Amitabh earlier, the youth have such an important role to play. How can this be mainstreamed? Especially, I think the media, the rest of the media, the print media, for example, could make this as a regular column. I think something which we can consider as a recommendation, so that you have a column every day in Mumbai or Chennai or wherever saying this is what the social media is saying about your problem, the problem we are facing, and the lack of response and so on. So I fully empathize with the point about the local level officials not even bothering to respond. And like Kirti, I was also involved in the smart city program, which right from the beginning was going the wrong way. It was quite obvious to all of us. Um, so that's one. The other thing, which is very interesting, if you look at how it's happening in China, is that although it's a very different political system, they have basically leveraged the media to change the narrative at the city level. There is a lot of excitement at the city level to local developments which are taking place. Now that is something which simply creates the energy where you bring in everyone in the city to say that this is what we are doing. For example, issues they've taken up to solve climate adaptation is what they call the spawn city approach, where they're trying to see how water can be stored. Because, as we all heard earlier, there's a problem of both too much and too little water. So instead of letting wastewater run away, how are the ways you can store it and so on? So this thing again, which comes back to the point that yes, Media by technology by itself is of no use, but when you combine technology with youth and you combine it with the fact that we do have a very robust so WhatsApp and social media platforms, including on YouTube and so on, how can we direct it to the city? Can we have city for each city a YouTube channel where you have one of these influencers spending 1 hour a day talking about the issues where young people participate? Even that could make a difference, because after all, the senior people in the bureaucracy are also their parents and their uncles and aunts and so on. So that could be a way of creating pressure. But ultimately, you have to have local leadership. It cannot happen from a chief minister or a prime minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vijay. That's a very important point. As a matter of fact, I don't know. I go on quoting this election, mayoral election that is taking place in New York, and that this gentleman, I think, who's won the Democratic, I forget his name, Democratic nomination, and the kind of noise is making, and kind of policy statement is making, and kind of questions is asking of the president. I think we never thought of it happening. I was in Kuala Lumpur last week, and the mayor of Kuala Lumpur gave a dinner after this big conference which was taking place, of Asian countries, of mayors, the 3,000 people. And you could see, I think, the kind of power and influence that she enjoys. And I think, we don't even know the name of the mayors in our cities, who they are. And it's very tragic, honestly. I think there's no need for it to happen, which really means that despite 30 years of 73rd and 74th administration, we have done very little in terms of transferring power and authority to our local governments. And therefore,
It is a legacy of the British Raj, because, as you know, when they had the municipal councils in Mumbai, Kolkata, and Chennai, that created the freedom movement. And after that, basically the British Raj cut the legs of the mayor right in the 1920s. Only Bangladesh has changed it. India and Pakistan still stick to basically the old model. And you're right, the mayor is of no consequence
yes,
in any Indian city.
yeah. Chitrakshi, any other key question? We will have to kind of wind up pretty soon.
So there is one question. Sunita ma'am had stressed about doing homework, about build plans rooted in our own realities, and then
Yes.
take those human stories and local solutions to the world. What would the journey look like for us as citizens and professionals to demand this homework from all our leaders in both Sarkar and Bazaar? Do we collectively begin to aspire for local inclusive solutions as the foundation of our global positioning?
Yeah, I would immediately turn to Nakul to respond to this. Nakul?
Chitra, can I request you to repeat the question once more, please?
Yes, sir. Uh, what would the journey look like for us as citizens and professionals to demand this homework from leaders in both Sarkar and Bazaar, so we collectively begin to aspire for local inclusive solutions as the foundation of our global positioning?
So thanks. I think this honestly, I think the question is really good, and it's a bit tricky based on Sarkar and Bazaar. I think we, of course, know the tariff war is ongoing, and there's largely a call in India and parts of global south to be more self-efficient, and self-manufacturing has to increase. So I think it could be related to that. But perhaps coming on to local action, I think the important point here is that, is that we need to ensure, I think there was also some discussions which were attributed during today's conversation, that how can we make sure that the larger global conversation can be made out more actionable in terms of local action, and it's just not posturing in terms of declarations. So from that angle, I think one thing that we have to make sure is that, and Vijay sir has very well mentioned, the challenge with the governance part of it, mayors are just sort of political figures, is that how can we make sure that the overall local body system in our part of the world can be more, sort of made into a way where they act as more, not only as mayors, but also as city CEOs. I mean, this was something which was
Yes.
also part of the smart city mission. There were a couple of
Yes.
cities. In fact, Indore has its own CEO. And the primary aspect of a city CEO is they ensure that how can they make sure that the right amount of financing and technology along with it are made available to city to make its own decisions. And transition from in all sectors, not only in energy, but in waste handling, waste regeneration and usage, and other sectors related to all the ecosystem, water, air pollution, road infrastructure. So everything has to be done in a very systematic manner. I think it's from Sarkar to Bazaar, I mean to say it's more of a development challenge, and how to make sure that development is right, we need to ensure how the governance system and the financial allocation in first space is right. So there's no shortcut and no short answer to say to that. But I think we need to get the basics right, as Sunita ma'am and all the panelists have said. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we will have to move. And only small little point I wanted to make, I think, Nakul, is this in the context of the observation that you made, that while I think the smart city had a great opportunity, they killed it by creating a special purpose vehicle to begin with. It was a contradiction in term. Instead of strengthening and capacitating your local governments, you created a special purpose vehicle with all the powers and the resources. In the process, I think did huge amount of damage. Well, I think, I'm sure there are many more questions which would take up, and I think we have to wind up. And I'm going to do two things. I'm going to ask each of the panelists, all the five, to take one last word from their side, maybe in 20, 30 seconds, in the context of the overall discussion that has taken place and the theme of the program. Amitabh Saab, can we start with you?
Sure. So very quickly, I do see, as with a lot of other things, even on urban issues, and not just restricted to climate change, but urban issues in general, and they are interrelated. They are not very separate issues. I would say there are things that are happening in the positive direction, just that the pace is not enough, and the pace is not as great as we would like it to be, and that's true for a lot of other things as well. So probably the direction is okay. There is a lot of some amount of changes happening. There is some public pressure also being put, just that it's not happening at the rate that we would like it to be. And we are getting increasingly impatient, as we are getting impatient with a lot of other things, on whether it's on economy or even on defense, or even say sports. We just want to get on with it much quickly than we are doing, and that's so at one level that's probably good, because this impatience would lead to some amount of pressure being created. So that's good. It's just that we see that this pressure is not adequate as of now. But yes, I mean, there are certain things that are happening. I would just say, instead of a lot of people very interested in, say, a lot of cities, for example, want airports or even metro stations, or even Vande Bharats to stop at their places, even though a lot of it might just be vanity projects, but not so much of interest in getting their schools right, or hospitals right, or roads right, or getting their parks right, or the ponds right. I think that shift in emphasis, if that happens, I think would create the kind of momentum that we are hoping for.
Thank you, Dr. Oswar.
Hello?
Your 30 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
So for me,
Very quickly, your last keyword, sir.
yeah, for me, champion is important in every single level of government, the city, the sub-district, the village, and including the informal leader, including the youth, the senior citizen, and disability. So by having this, we believe that our climate change would be like mainstreaming in our policy and government. That's all. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Nakul Bhai.
So I think since we are also very focused on climate negotiations, and I think the conversation is between climate and development, I think it's important for us to understand that the city level planning and the implementation does not happen in negotiating room. It happens in our neighborhood and it happens in the community. So we need to move from planning and declarations and all of these things towards implementation, and we need to do it at the least possible lowest level, which is the local level. So the local authorities have to be empowered, and the decision making on all of the things, whether it's just transition, clean energy transition, water infrastructure, this has to be decentralized to local level. And that's where the city level and local level plan will make the most impact, be it climate impact or be it the development impact. So yeah.
Thank you. The last one, Vijay Saab.
Kirti, my suggestion is that INHAF should take the role of being an influencer. You've seen so many of these young people who have a big following through YouTube. Why don't you have someone like Nakul be your influencer and take topics of interest to young people? You know, the kinds of things which affects their daily life, but also put in a little dose of the things we're talking about, because ultimately these are the people who can put pressure on their parents and on the leaders to make things happen. Otherwise, we have now two distinctly different pathways which are not meeting at all. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to, and in any case, I always ask Nakul Bhai's help in everything I do. So I think I'm not going to kind of spare Nakul. But thank you, ma'am, very much, Vijay Saab, for reinforcing that particular sentiments. Now we will wind up. And before we wind up, uh, let me thank all our panelists for the rich and thoughtful insights. We heard today about the call for equality and justice from Sunita, centrality of finance and governance from Vijay Saab, lessons from Jakarta's resilience from Dr. Mungkasa, the power of clear communication from Amitabh Ji, and the urgency of a just energy transition from Nakul. Together, these voices remind us the cities are not just implementers of climate policy. They are innovators, they are leaders and advocates shaping the global future. This is just the beginning of our journey together. Next week, we turn to city-level case studies from across Asia. Thank you all for being part of today's conversation, but this is not over. Give me another half a minute. Before we wind up completely, besides the panelists who must be thanked again and again, I must also thank my colleague Varsha, who leads INHAF's climate project in Chennai called Climate Chennai, Chitrakshi, who manages INHAF studio and thereby webinar logistics. Devam Sheth, who is an intern with us for the past few months and have assumed much of coordination responsibility. Sanjay Bhai and Nakul Bhai from Kansa, Mir Bhai from All India Disaster Mitigation Institute, and Pauli of Citinet. All of this have worked very hard in putting this webinar series together and INHAF, and I'm very grateful to them for their effort. We will meet again on 26th. And for the second event of the 5-part series on 26th. A little before that, on 22nd August, we have one more webinar, and it's called Living the Climate Crisis, Overlooked Perspectives of Informal Workers in Changing Urban India, in collaboration with Urban Management Center. So this is a little bit of my publicity. Please come and join us on 22nd and of course 26th, when we have our second session of the climate and city webinar series. Thank you very much to everyone for being here, for participating, and for giving some very good ideas. So thank you very much to all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Amitabh sir. Thank you, Nakul bhai.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you very much.
Oswar. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Kirti.
you, Vijay sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Chitrakshi.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, sir.